So the much anticipated matchup between Israel Adesanya and Joe Pyfer is about to go down in just about a week. And I wanted to make this video to talk about the narrative that's been building for a while now that Israel Adesanya is no longer peak Adesanya, that we're dealing with a washed version of himself, of the style bender. And I don't necessarily agree with those opinions nor those statements. And I hope in this video I can kind of go over my reasons for believing so. And the thesis I'm really here to explain in this video is that it's not necessarily that Adesanya is washed. It's more so that the level of competition has increased. You're going to see that Adesanya is fighting a lot higher levels of competition compared to when he was at his peak. Now, the question becomes, what exactly is peak Adesanya? Like, this is something most people can't even agree upon. Some people say that the Pereira fight, the one before Pereira fights, were his peak. Some people say his peak ended after he knocked out Pereira. I do think it's a bit convenient that his peak ended as soon as he lost the first fight to Pereira. That's very convenient. But for argument's sake, I'll just say his peak was before the Pereira fights. And I also want to bring up the fact that, yeah, I am well aware, Adesanya is 38 years old currently. And when he was fighting as a champion, he was, 32, 33, 34. I understand that over time, once you hit 38, you're not going to be as fast as you were at 32. That's just how it works. But with that being said, though, it's not like Adesanya went from Sonic the Hedgehog to a snail. Like, I don't think it really works that way. So I'm very understanding of the fact that, sure, some differences might be there as far as his skill set, but I don't think it's been a massive downgrade. And I think he's actually upgraded in other ways. I think his boxing has gotten a bit more crispy as far as what we've seen in his fight with Imavov. And his takedown defense, before he was getting taken down by Vettori and Vettori was getting his back. And now he was stuffing every takedown from Imavov. He was stuffing a ton of the takedowns from Dricus du Plessis. So he might have lost some speed, but his takedown defense seems to have improved. His strength overall has improved. And as Joe Rogan says, in fighting, the first thing that leaves is speed, not power. So power is something that kind of stays with you always. And I think Izzy's power is there. Maybe his speed is kind of gone from like a 10 to like a 9 maybe, but his strength has definitely increased. But now that I've gotten all that out of the way, I want to make my first point in this video and kind of look at who were Izzy's opponents during his so-called peak era, right? And these are all the way from Derek Brunson to his second fight with Whitaker, or I believe Cannonier was actually his fight before Pereira. And I'm not going to include Silva here because the Silva fight, I believe that was a short notice. It was a three-round fight anyways, and I think Silva was on like a losing streak. I mean, if you were to put the Silva that Izzy fought, he would be on D tier. So I could include him, but I feel like for this video, I don't necessarily have to because we already have so many options to choose from. Now, I'm going to start by saying this. Izzy defended his belt against Marvin Vettori. Marvin Vettori has not gotten worse. You might watch him today and think to yourself that, oh man, Vettori, he's gotten so much worse. Like he was fighting for the belt and now he's like on the prelims and he's not ranked. It's like, dude, no, he was always this bad. It just speaks to the level of the middleweight division. I started watching the UFC when Brock Lesnar came over because I was a big WWE fan. And I stopped watching UFC a little bit after he left. And then I came back when Conor McGregor was kind of doing his thing. And I watched for a bit then. And then I took maybe like a year hiatus during that time period as well. But I was really like a full-time, but like a constant watcher of the UFC, a hardcore fan of the UFC, basically from 2019 onwards. And the middleweight division has always, from that time until very recently, has been kind of just this dry, like really dry situation. It's not very good at all. And the fact that Marvin Vettori was fighting for the belt is proof of just how bad this division one time was. This guy has nothing going for him, really. Grappling's like a C, striking is a D, power is a D. His chin is an S tier plus, but that's about it. And he was fighting Adesanya. Are any of us surprised that Adesanya was having a complete 50-45, a dominant performance against a guy like Vettori? I'm not. Then you have Derek Brunson, who was one-dimensional, kind of a Looney Tunes fighter. had a good win over Darren Till, but that was because Darren Till can't wrestle. And Derek Brunson was always just kind of a Looney Tune, one-dimensional fighter who was there to be knocked out. You go up, and you get Paulo Costa, who I was rooting for against Adesanya, and which, by the way, I should use this opportunity to mention that I'm not like a big Izzy fanboy. I rooted for him against Vittori, but I rooted for Costa against him. I rooted for him against Cannonier, but I rooted for Pereira against him. So it's like, I like Izzy in general. I'm not a huge fan. Like, he's not one of my favorite fighters, but I like him enough, and I'll root for him against other guys that I'm not as big of a fan of, like Cannonier or Vittori or Derek Brunson. But going back to Paulo Costa, Costa is an extremely one-dimensional fighter. Some of you may be saying, why is he on C tier if Vittori is on D tier? Didn't Vittori beat him? If you watch the fight, Costa looked pretty bloated. I believe him when he said he was injured. Now, that doesn't take from the fact that he did lose the fight. But styles do make fights. I think Costa had a much better performance against Whitaker than Vittori did. If Vittori was to fight Strickland, I think Strickland would just have a masterclass, whereas the fight with Costa was a bit closer than I think a lot of people want to admit. But Costa is very one-dimensional. Leading up to the fight with Izzy had mentioned, like, how do you beat Costa? It's easy. He likes to get you up against the fence. You just move. And everybody thought, Izzy's talking crazy. I remember during the weigh-ins, people on Twitter, people were like, dude, Izzy fans, like, are you guys starting to feel a bit afraid now that Costa might get it done? But Izzy just had the perfect game plan. Costa is so one-dimensional, and you can see this now where his best win currently in middleweight. I know he's going up to light heavyweight, but currently in middleweight, his best win is a unranked Roman Kopylov. Jared Cannonier, you can move him up or down, or like he's an interesting pick. You can argue he's actually a B tier, but that performance, man, I don't know what game plan Cannonier came in with. Izzy was complimenting him for it. Looking at this, I could probably justify putting Cannonier up at B tier maybe, but dude, I was so disappointed with his performance against Izzy. It was just a clinch fest, right? And he did have a close fight with Strickland, which one judge had like 49-46 Strickland, one judge had it 49-46 Cannonier. I had it a very clear Strickland, so really weird, close, clear fight. I don't know how to explain it. Kelvin Gastelum, again, even at that point, never a middleweight, always a welterweight, just really tough. But Izzy did kind of smoke him. It's a great fight, but looking back, should Izzy have really had that close of a fight with a guy like Gastelum in the first place? And we move on to Yoel Romero. Again, some of you might say another case of he should be ranked higher. Yoel Romero was one of those guys where it just kind of depended on the Romero that showed up. He would sometimes be an S tier, sometimes he'd be a D tier. And the Romero that showed up was certainly not an S tier fighter. He just kind of stood there, and his game plan was very simple. Just wait for Izzy to come forward so he can explode on the counter. Having that game plan against a guy who counter punches is kind of dumb. I don't know why that was the plan, but he's still a B tier because you looked at how Adesanya really did not want to engage in the close quarters with him as much as he did like even a Costa, right? Izzy was definitely respecting Romero's power more than he did Costa, and I can't blame him, dude. Even when Romero did come forward with his barrages, you could see the effect it was having on Izzy, right? So I'll keep him in B tier. And the best win of Izzy's career at that point that people call the peak was the 2 wins over Whitaker. And the second win, I kind of think Whitaker arguably won the second fight. It was a very close one, I understand. But it was close. He got a clear knockout in the first fight. Whitaker is a champion, and it is a very impressive win. So when you look at also the fact that Whitaker basically beat everybody not named Adesanya in the middleweight division, until DDP, of course. But he has a win over, I think, pretty much everybody on this list. He beat Romero. He beat Cannonier. He beat Costa. He beat Gastelum. He beat Vittori. I don't think he beat Derek Brunson, however. Or maybe he did, actually, if I'm remembering. Was it at welterweight at that time? I can't remember, but he basically beat everybody, right? So that's a very impressive win, but that's his sole very impressive wins to me are those 2 Whitaker wins. Now, we head into what people call the washed era of Izzy, the not-so-peak era. And let's look at the caliber of opponents he's fighting. Alex Pereira, Dricus du Plessis, Sean Strickland, all 3 of them champions. Nasruddin Imavov, you can't argue from a skill basis, he should be an S tier. I'm kind of just keeping S tier for the actual champions, but Imavov very well could be a future champion when he gets his title shot, which he's not getting right now. But very impressive skill set, right? He completely outclassed Caio Borralho, and I do understand that he does poke his opponents in the eyes a lot and stuff, but he is very impressive skill wise, and you could very well argue he should be on S tier. I wouldn't be against it. Strickland, we just saw what he did to Fluffy Hernandez. I mean, it's weird because it's like a lot of people I feel don't want to admit how good he is because of his maybe choice of words or whatnot, but it's like he's just incredible, isn't he? And then you have Dricus du Plessis, who, masterclass against Strickland in the second fight. The first fight was very close. Aside from that, just the best goofy fighter in UFC history, and there's quite a few to choose from, right? But when you look at the goofiest fighters the UFC's ever had, he's the one who became champion. And Alex Pereira, that kind of goes without saying. Now, Izzy does have a win over him, and I consider that to be the best win of Izzy's career by far, that win over Pereira. And that's the one that will define his legacy, I think, especially as Pereira moves on to become a three-weight champion. And Nasruddin Imavov is very well a future champion if he ever gets the title shot, right? So you can see now that if we were to compare between his opponents, you have Whitaker, Romero, Costa, Cannonier, Gastelum. Then you have like Vittori and Brunson, and you could include a past his prime Silva, and you can see Izzy was having all of these crazy cool moments, and he was basically styling on everybody below the B tier, basically. And then the Romero fight was a weird one. Whitaker, he styled on in the first fight. Second fight was kind of close. And then he gets here, and then suddenly he can't style on them as much because the caliber of opponents is so much higher. And even in the Pereira fight, the first one that he lost, dude, he was winning the fight, and he won the first round after he wobbled Pereira. Pereira came back, won the second. Third round was, I think, the one where Izzy wrestled. And then the fourth round, he, again, won it off of points. And going into the fifth round, he was on top, right? So, very impressive performances twice against Pereira. One where he lost, but he looked real good. And the second one, he wasn't looking so good, but then he knocked him out. And you look at the caliber of opponents again. You can't call him washed just because he's fighting guys who... You saw what Imavov did to Cannonier. You saw what DDP was doing to, some of these other guys. You saw what DDP did to Whitaker. You saw what Strickland was doing to everybody. That Fluffy performance. People thought Fluffy was going to beat Chimaev. Like, that was the hardest fight for Chimaev. And Strickland just does that. Like, the level is completely different. And I don't necessarily agree with... when it comes to the Strickland fight, like, first of all, Izzy looked great in all of these fights, not just the Pereira ones, the Imavov one. Go back and rewatch that fight. He looked sensational. That's one of the best Israel Adesanyas we've ever seen. The leg kicks, stuffing the takedowns. He was so strong in the clinch. He was faster, and we're going to see that in a second. Or I think we are. I might have actually removed that slide. But he was countering Imavov perfectly. Then he got eye poked, and I'm not going to blame the eye poke for his loss. The referee gave him an opportunity. He didn't want it. That means he was fine enough, and then he immediately got clipped because I think he changed stances, and Imavov took advantage of his lazy stance change and knocked him out. It is what it is. He looked amazing against DDP, stuffing a lot of the takedowns, landing brutal body shots. When I was watching that live, I was thinking to myself, dude, Izzy might finish him with body shots here. The only fight that he didn't really look impressive in from this list is the Strickland fight. And my theory is, on top of the fact that Izzy just couldn't solve the puzzle that is Strickland. Strickland's a very tough puzzle to solve, especially because Strickland did take the fight kind of on short notice. It was a 4-week notice, I believe, or 3-week notice. I think Izzy was training for DDPs, but Strickland's one of those guys you need a while to kind of really determine how you're going to fight him. Abus Magomedov, Nasruddin Imavov, Strickland fought both of these guys on short notice. They had nothing for him because he's such a difficult puzzle to solve. Imavov, by the fifth round, sort of had a better understanding, had a really good fifth round. Strickland, I think, was gassing a bit at that point, right? He took it on short notice. But Izzy really didn't have anything for Strickland. Part of it, I do think he just got concussed, maybe. Like, he mentioned feeling he couldn't really... He felt as, like, underwater or something. And, it could be that he just got concussed from getting dropped in the first round. And he just couldn't really get back into his rhythm. But it was also, of course, he just didn't have a game plan for for Strickland, and which reveals some of his weaknesses. Now we're going to talk about Joe Pyfer real quick because, as you've seen, I am going to be picking Israel Adesanya to beat Joe Pyfer. I would put Joe Pyfer on the B tier if you were to compare him to, all the other guys on the lists. I consider him a B tier fighter. I was rewatching some of his fights, and this guy's power, he's genuinely insane. Like, the power this guy has in his hands is ridiculous, really. But one thing you have to admit, when you go look at, for example, his win over Kelvin Gastelum was a 3-round fight, dropped him a couple of times in the first round, but he lost the third round, right? Pretty clearly. I think he got 30-27, which is ridiculous. But you go look at Kelvin Gastelum's resume, and he got a win over D-Rod and Chris Curtis, but then he's kind of win here, lose here, win here, lose here, right? Joe Pyfer did look really impressive in some of the moments of his fight with Kelvin Gastelum, especially at the first round. But there's a lot that I see from him where I think Adesanya will take advantage of what he's doing here. He also lost to Jack Hermanson in a decision. Again, you talk about Joe Pyfer's crazy power and stuff. It's pretty consistent. He hurts guys regularly, but I have not seen anything from him that makes me terrified for Izzy. Good wrestling, but again, I think Izzy's takedown defense has improved tremendously, especially in the past few years. His power, again, is something to worry about, but it's not like he's got crazy striking ability. His two most recent wins are Kelvin Gastelum and Abus Magomedov. That win is pretty good. Better than a Kelvin win. But again, it's just nothing there that makes me go, he's a master of range. He's got crazy good defense, crazy counter ability. His leg is there to be chewed up. If he tries to shoot on Izzy, I see Izzy shucking him off. And in the striking, I just think, again, you got to be a bit worried about Joe Pyfer's power, but speed for speed, technique for technique, I think Adesanya has got him matched. And now, very quickly, I do want to mention one thing. I was rewatching his fight with DDP. This is all from the first round, by the way. I do think Izzy has flaws in his game, and this is something that you wouldn't know if you listened to Joe Rogan or any of the commentators, because they're just doing what they always do and just yapping and yapping and yapping. Izzy is very good. He's a very good kickboxer. He's a very good technical striker. He makes a lot of mistakes. He loves to lean back. When he's being charged at by Dricus du Plessis, he leans back, and as you can see, he gets caught pretty regularly, man. Like, Izzy's not that hard to hit. Joe Rogan might tell you otherwise. He is there to be hit. Now, he does lean back, and he's really good at bobbing and weaving, so he does also dodge a lot of the moves like he did against Vettori. But against more competent, I wouldn't call Dricus du Plessis like a very competent striker, but against a Sean Strickland, he didn't have that success. Against a Dricus du Plessis, he was very explosive, very powerful. He was not having that success. He got hurt a couple of times on the feet. Against Nasruddin Imavov, he did not have that same success either. So that is one thing I've really noticed about Izzy's fight style, is that as good as he is in the counters and in different things, I do feel like his leaning back style is a bit lazy, and against the Joe Pyfer, that does scare me because, again, rewatching some of Pyfer's fights, this guy has legit power. Like, it's not just, oh, the UFC is trying to erase Francis, so they're saying Pyfer hits like blah, 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 blah. It's not even that. He genuinely just hits very, very hard. But when we look back at it, got schooled by Jack Hermanson. Now he has improved. He's very young. He's almost 10 years younger than Izzy, I think. He's improving at a rapid rate. But the Kelvin Gastelum fight, the way he gave up the third round, I really do like what he said in the post-fight speech, which he said, I think he admitted to basically going against the game plan that his coaches had built for him. And I like it when a fighter that young is like able to come to the conclusion like, yeah, I mean, I didn't do what I was supposed to do. That was my mistake. I'll learn from it. And then he goes and he smokes Abus in the very next fight. But Kelvin ain't ranked. Abus ain't ranked. Izzy is, and he's had sensational performances against Dricus and Imavov, even losing that first round against Imavov. He looked incredible. Even in the second round, the lightning speed leg kicks he was throwing and stuff. He was chucking him off when he went for the takedowns. Is Pyfer stronger than Izzy? Oh, for sure. I mean, not Izzy. He's probably stronger than Izzy too. But is he stronger than Imavov? Sure. Could I see him getting a takedown or two? Sure, but I see Izzy being really good at kind of holding him up in the clinch, working his way out, keeping the fight standing, and kind of piecing him apart there. Uh, Still a bit afraid of the power, but yeah, I think Izzy's gonna win this fight. I'm not agreeing at all with the whole narrative of Izzy's past his prime or he's washed. He's slowed down in some areas. He's not as fast as he once was, but he's a lot more powerful, I think, and strong now. And the level of competition, that Pereira win will go down in history. That's one of the most impressive wins of his career, the most impressive win of his career. Can't take anything away from him, man. So, yeah, I hope you guys can kind of see where I'm coming from. Compare his old performances and his old fights and title fights to the guy he's fighting now, and you'll see that he's fighting the best. And I consider Joe Pyfer to be very good, but I would not put him on the same level as an Imavov yet, or definitely not a Strickland, DDP, and Pereira, who are all proven fighters. I think he's on that B tier. I think he has a lot of room for improvement, and he will improve. He's improving already. He might have a couple of good moments. I could see him maybe stunning Izzy with a shot in the first, second round, but he does gas out. He does slow down as the fight goes on, and if he tries to pace himself for a 5-rounder, I just think Izzy's going to pick him apart anyways. His best chance at winning, I think, is really those first 2 rounds, really pushing the pace, getting him up against the cage, and really trying to finish him with that power he has. But I just think Izzy's such a difficult fighter to finish in general. But yeah, that's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.